Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Everything is Bad New Fangled Motion Picture Show.
Welcome, one and all, to another episode of the Everything is Bad New Fangled Motion Picture Show. I'm your host, Darth Niall.
And I'm your host, Darth Nolan.
You're Darth too?
I don't know. They don't have do they have titles and Jedi Nolan, I guess?
Well, there's Master,
yeah.
Knight, Master.
Alright.
You're really more of a, Padawan, though. You could grow a Padawan braid, Nolan. I think you could pull that off.
No.
No? Anyway, so today we're going to be reviewing the new Star Wars movie, in case you haven't figured that part out yet. But before we get into that, I just want to say, and this is important, we will be doing a spoiler-free review. We will not be doing any discussion of specific plot points in the first part of our review. Then we will give you a very cut and clear spoiler warning. And it will be very obvious. And then we will, from that point forward, it's all free game. We are also, for the spoiler-free part, assuming you have seen the previous two movies. Or the previous... all of them, really.
8 of them.
8, well, 10 of them. I doubt we're really going to be discussing anything earlier than episode 7, but just be aware, we're assuming, in our spoiler-free part, we're assuming that you've seen movies that are more than 2 years old, so... just throwing that out there. Any other housekeeping to get through before we get into this, Nolan?
Nah.
Alright. We're also both kind of sick, so we're going to try not to cough into the mics as best we can. Anyway, so this movie was okay.
It was fine. I think it was definitely better than The Last Jedi. It's been a while since I've seen The Force Awakens. I think I like it better than The Force Awakens. But definitely not as good as any of the original trilogy. But I think it was excuse me. I think it was a fine movie, and it was a decent send off and way to end the saga.
Yeah, so all of the problems with this movie come down to they come down to basically two things. One, the pacing's fast.
It doesn't give you a rest.
The movie moves a mile a minute. Do not get up to go pee during the movie, because you will miss something.
You might miss a lot of things, actually.
So we've seen this movie twice. And yeah, there was stuff that I picked up on seeing it the second time that I missed the first time, because there's just you blink and you miss it stuff. But really the reason for that is also the reason why it has the second problem is that they're just trying to do so much, because basically nothing happened in episode 8. As far as the overall plot, very little development happened.
So there's a lot of stuff that needed to be crammed into this movie to wrap it all up and answer all the questions.
And they didn't answer all the questions either. There's one or two left hanging. We'll get more into that, more into the specifics of that in the spoiler part of the review. But they still didn't even wrap up everything that was left hanging. But they wrapped up all the important things. But yeah, it was. I think J.J. Abrams did a very good job with the hand he was dealt. I think he came in and was well, the only thing that really happened. 2 things happened in the last movie. Well, I guess 3. The Resistance got hammered.
Luke Skywalker died.
Luke Skywalker died, and Rey got training as a Jedi. That was basically it. This is the only things, like, for the overall plot of the saga that were important from that movie. Benicio del Toro talked with a tick or whatever.
Yeah.
And then nothing happened in that movie, basically. So, and then
they killed out Captain Phasma, who was a do-nothing character to begin with.
Man, she was this saga's Boba Fett for sure. Just this cool character with cool looking armor, and you're assuming based on the way she handled, like, you know, the way she talks and whatnot, you assume she's a badass. But you never see her do much that's actually that badass. And then she dies in a pretty lame way.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely this saga is Boba Fett, especially because they did a lot of stuff to... Like, Phasma was all over the merchandising before Force Awakens came out. And then there was that book. And I think she had a shorts comic series.
Yeah, she did.
And the book was really interesting. She's from, like, this primitive, savage world. And you know, there's all this, like, tribal fighting and stuff. And then the First Order shows up, basically. So that was really neat, really interesting. And then they just did nothing with the character. And again, I think that was Rian Johnson's fault. Like, I think he was given the opportunity to do something cool with her and just didn't.
Yeah.
But I think really as far as like what they had to work with, I think J.J. Abrams did a very good job with this movie. The action is all great. It looks gorgeous. There's some sets that are very clearly have to be sound stages because there's just no way they can't not be sound stages.
CGI?
Well, yeah, but CGI. I mean, but like, yeah, like soundstage with set extension stuff and like CGI backgrounds.
Yeah,
you know, there's some sets that would have to be because there's no way they can't be that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but it's not obvious.
There's some interior sets that are so massive they have to be. Yeah, like basically where the characters are standing is soundstage and everything else is CGI or something. It's the only way they could do it. But yeah, it looks real. You know,
we've come a long way since episode 3.
Yeah,
which is the most obviously fake movie ever made.
Yeah, well, when you have a situation where, like, hey, instead of using this actor for these characters, let's face scan him and make a CGI version of him. Like, what? You have the actor. He has to voice the characters anyway.
You're talking about the clone troopers?
I'm talking about the clone troopers.
Yeah, that was
and when
really
they take
bad.
their helmet, in episode 3, if you didn't know, every time you see a clone trooper's face, that's a CGI version of him.
I can't remember that guy's name.
Yeah, it's a Maori name, and I can't remember it. He was in Aquaman. He was Aquaman's dad.
It's Aquaman's dad.
But yeah, it's like, why? You have the actor. He has to voice the character anyway. Just put him there.
Just put him in the armor.
Even if it was like CGI, even if it was like him in a green body glove and you CGI'd the armor on top of him, would have been better than what they did. They fully CGI'd this character. What's the point?
Yeah. But anyway, this movie, though, looks great. I mean, it just... all the sets look really good. All of the all the aliens and whatnot all looks really cool.
I think they used a lot of practical effects where traditionally, like,
there was a lot of stuff.
What has become traditional would be CGI, but they're using practical stuff.
There was a lot of characters that are situation where you would assume they would just do CGI, but they look like they're probably puppets. One character in particular is like very definitely a puppet.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to spoil it, but he's the best character in the show. The best character in the movie.
Well, there was one point where there was an explosion, and you leaned over and like, I think that's a practical effect.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll get into that in the spoiler
It looked
part.
like it. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like, it looked like a practical effect. I mean, rather than it being a CG.
You know,
explosion
they've gotten really good at doing CG explosions, but sometimes you just can't
It wasn't just the explosion, but it was the debris.
Yeah, the
coming off
debris
it.
and like the fire coming. It just I don't want to spoil it. So we'll discuss it further on the spoiler part. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that there's explosions in a Star Wars movie. But yeah, there's this one explosion that was very much so looked like an actual, like they filmed an actual explosion with packed the prop full of thermite or something and blew it the hell up, and probably slowed the footage down. But
We always slow down footage of explosions and make them look bigger.
yeah,
So yeah, my only, I have a few nitpicks here and there, but they're not big deals. The biggest, like with you, is the pacing. I think this movie could almost stand to be 3 hours long.
it's 2 hours and 20.
Yeah.
I think.
Basically, like you have like a movie and a half.
2 hours
crammed
and
in there.
21 according to IMDb.
You have like a movie and a half, almost 2 movies in there worth of stuff going on in this.
Because nothing happened in the last one. There's a lot of stuff that happens in this, a lot of development that happens in this that could have easily been covered in the previous one, but they spent so much time doing nothing.
Well, I think because we were talking about this earlier today. I've seen reviews from people like on IMDb that say things like, this is how a movie by committee looks. I'm like, no, that's the problem is this trilogy was not by committee, and that's the biggest problem. Because what should have happened is they should have laid out a plan for 3 movies.
Like they did with the Marvel films.
They should have laid out a plan for 3 movies, written all those movies, and divvied them up. So here's like a third of the story, here's a third, and here's a third. That's where we're separating the movies, and handed them off to directors or gotten directors to do them if J.J. Abrams didn't want to do them all.
Or at the
whatever.
at the very least, they should have had the full treatment for the whole thing, for all 3 of them.
Right,
done.
but what happened was J.J. Abrams made a movie that was a standalone movie. And then they're like, okay, now we need a sequel. Rian Johnson, come make this movie. And he makes a movie. And they're like, okay, now we need a third one. What do we do? J.J. Abrams is like, okay, well, I'll figure it out. Well, I think someone else did the initial script. J.J. Abrams worked on it after it had already been written by. There's other writing credits on there, but you're after the The Last Jedi. You're kind of left with, okay, now where do we take this? They should have known that from the beginning, and they didn't, and that's where this trilogy kind of falls apart.
Yeah, so the whole, unfortunately, part of our review of this movie is also going to be partially a review of the previous one, because our opinions of the previous one have changed now that it's more apparent how much Rian Johnson screwed JJ over, basically. And here's the thing: I don't think The Last Jedi ruined the saga or ruined this trilogy like so many people seem to think. I don't think it was a super terrible movie. It definitely had problems, but I think it was a bad saga movie. I think it was a bad movie to have in the middle of a trilogy where you have this overarching story. It's something that that whole story. I mean, the whole story takes place over the course of like a day.
Yeah.
And you could have that's something that easily could have been a freaking comic book.
Yeah, really, not much happens in that movie to advance anything. Well, to be fair, I think the Rise of Skywalker only takes place over the course of like 2 days or something like that. They give a time period before the main event's going to happen.
36 hours, I think, something like that.
Yeah, so like 3 days. Like they have a time limit to achieve what they need to achieve.
Yeah.
Before the main events happen, there's
like
a definite time limit that they know at this time this is going to happen.
Yeah, there's like a day's worth of events, and then they go, okay, so in these many hours, this is going to happen. Yeah, and it's like they set a watch. I mean, there's like a zoom in shot of someone setting a timer on a wristwatch. But now that I think about it, it's kind of weird. The timeline feels weird because Rey can't have spent more than a couple days with Luke, right?
Yeah.
Training?
Yeah, but then if you look at Empire Strikes Back, how long did Luke spend with Yoda? A few days, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's implied it's a couple of weeks or something.
Maybe. You know what movie has a really confusing timeline is Revenge of the Sith. Because you're like, oh, for the beginning of the movie, you're like, oh, Padme's pregnant. And then by the end of the movie, the way it's cut together, it only feels like a few days, but it has to be months.
Because she's not really showing.
She's not showing at the beginning, but she is ready to give birth at the end of that movie.
I mean, she's very pregnant, and then
right. But like the way it's cut is like Obi-Wan's like, I'm gonna go to this planet, and then like, does he spend months on that planet? It doesn't seem like it, but
on Utapau.
Yeah.
I mean, they run a whole campaign against the droid army there, I guess.
Yeah, it's weird the way the movie's cut together. It logically it has to be over the course of months, but it feels like at the most a week.
Well, from my perspective, the Jedi are evil.
Okay, that's a non sequitur.
I was just thinking about that movie, and that's one of the best bad lines, I think.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes. Anyway, back to this movie. Anyway, yeah, I think this movie's okay.
It's a fine movie.
It's fine. I don't.
And here's the thing: we're both really, really big Star Wars fans.
Yeah, we read all the comics, read all the books, watch everything.
And we
even defend The Last Jedi to some extent.
Yeah, I mean, the movie definitely has its problems. Rose Tico is not one of the problems with that movie. Of all the things to pick apart about that movie, why people focus on Rose Tico is beyond me. But anyway, yeah, it's I think all the problems with this movie basically stem from Rian Johnson's movie. And I think, Rian Johnson has said on multiple occasions he likes to subvert genres and your expectations in his movies, so maybe not the best choice for the world's biggest genre film series with the biggest fan base.
Yeah.
Maybe not the time and place for that, especially a numbered saga film.
I think if they really wanted Rian Johnson to make a Star Wars film, they should have handed him a Star Wars story.
Yeah,
definitely one of the standalone films.
I
think he could have done something really interesting with a non-saga Star Wars film.
Yep.
But yeah, The Last Jedi just wasn't the one for him.
Oh man, and they do a lot of, well, not a lot, but there's definitely some lines in there that are like, people had a problem with this from the last movie, so here's a line to explain why we're not doing that thing suddenly.
Yeah.
We'll get more into that in the spoiler part. It's kind of funny, frankly, in a couple places. So I will say this: I actually finally really like the way all the main characters were handled.
I've always been disappointed with the way Finn has been handled.
He was cool in this movie. He does some, awesome action scenes shooting and
he's
whatnot.
got his stuff together. So finally,
he's got his stuff together. He has interesting dialogue to say. He holds his own in a fight. Then Poe Dameron, the way Poe Dameron was treated in the last movie was a travesty. He's such a cool character, and again, we read all the comics and a lot of the novels, and obviously we watch the shows, although Poe Dameron hasn't been in any of the shows, but we read all the comics, or most of the comics. And
most of them. We read Poe Dameron's comics.
Read Poe Dameron. We've read all the Poe Dameron comics. And the way they build him up, he's a really cool character, hero of the Resistance, and they just treated him like shit in the last movie. Suddenly, Holdo, who came across as a different kind of character in that Leia novel, which we also read. Goes, well, I can't trust this guy, this hero of the Resistance who's been going around doing super secret squirrel stuff for the Resistance for years and is probably the most trusted person in the Resistance as established in the comics. We can't tell him our plan.
Who answers straight to Leia. And who is known to just go and to be reactionary and do something in any situation. He's known to just go do something without really thinking about it. God forbid we tell him our plan. Yeah. When telling him the plan might have prevented him from doing something stupid.
It would have prevented 100% of the problems they had in that movie. I mean, other than the First Order chasing him off that planet, it would have prevented all of the problems that arose from that. And that's my biggest problem. In case you can't tell, that is my biggest problem with The Last Jedi.
That is also my biggest problem with The Last Jedi.
My second biggest problem is Holdo's a bad military leader. But that's a discussion for another time. But yeah, so they do
even C-3PO is given a lot more to do in this movie than he has.
Yeah, C-3PO is in this movie a lot. You know, I do have a problem with one of the main things he did. We'll get into that in the spoiler part. Should have made a list of stuff to go in the spoiler part. But I
don't know if we'll remember to cover it all.
Yeah, well, we could always pause this and play it back and listen to everything we say we go over in the spoiler part. Probably not going to do that. Let's be honest. I mean, it's like we've got Kylo Ren's really cool in this movie. I think he do some really cool stuff with him.
Mm-hmm.
The Knights of Ren are finally doing something.
Other than just appearing in a flashback?
Rey's being there, doing cool Jedi stuff, looking really good in skin-tight white pants.
Yeah.
Some cool space battle stuff.
Finally got Lando in the movie.
Yep. And there's a cameo by the Ghost, presumably. Of course, it could also just be that model of ship.
I'm sure it's intended to be the Ghost.
Probably.
So, yeah, I mean, I think we need to throw up a spoiler warning here.
Yeah, here's the thing. Before we get into the spoiler part, I'm telling you should see it. It is definitely worth seeing on the big screen. And frankly, if you're the kind of person who is unsure whether or not they want to go see a Star Wars movie in theater, our review is not going to change your mind because you've already made up your mind about how, Kelly Marie Tran or
Kathleen
Kennedy have ruined the Star Wars movies, and you refuse to see anymore, or give them your money, or whatever reason you have given to yourself to not see this movie. Us telling you that it's a decent movie is not going to make.
Frankly, if my opinion is that if you can't find something redeeming in any of these Star Wars movies, I don't think you're really a fan.
No. Here's the thing. The original trilogy had problems. It did. And I mean, I love The Empire Strikes Back. I think it is an excellent, just a well-made movie all around, but even that still has problems. And it's it's a space opera. There's magic space wizards. Instantaneous communication across a galaxy. Stop taking it seriously.
When they want it, instantaneous travel across a galaxy. Sometimes it takes a while, sometimes it's instantaneous. It's whatever matters. When the writers of the Clone Wars say, how many lightsabers can R2-D2 hold? As many as we need for him to move the story along?
Yeah.
That's how you know the kind of movie you're watching.
Yep.
What can R2-D2 do it? Yes, because we need him to do it to move the story along.
I mean,
that's how it works.
They come up with new force powers, when they have a reason for it. you can't. I've seen some people who are upset with the way the Force is handled because they're like, oh, that's not, the Force can't do that. And I'm like, well, A, it's space magic. How do you know what it can and can't do, really? B, until The Empire Strikes Back, nobody knew that they could manipulate objects with the Force because it doesn't happen in A New Hope. Vader chokes a dude out, but at no point do they move any objects with the Force.
No telekinesis.
No telekinesis. And then in the first 20 minutes of Empire Strikes Back, Luke pulls his lightsaber out of the snow to his hand.
That's the first time you ever see someone move an object with the Force in Star Wars. In the second movie. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, that's cool.
And it's considered a staple Force power. Like, it's considered one of the obvious things that a Jedi can do. So, like...
You never saw the Jedi use the Force to move faster than normal until Episode 1.
Yeah.
You see in Empire Strikes Back, Luke leaps out of the carbon freezing chamber pretty high, so it's assumed, okay, maybe you can use the Force to jump high. You see him do it once.
Mm-hmm.
You don't... A lot of stuff that is considered, like, common Force usage, you don't even see till the prequels or the Clone Wars.
Yeah. So,
as far as canon uses of the Force, all that stuff had appeared in, video games and books and stuff which were not canon.
Right. And we'll get... There's a specific thing that people are taking an issue with. We'll get more into it in the spoiler part, but I think they do a good job of explaining why this Force power in particular and why this moment in particular. And so yeah, we'll get to that in the spoiler part. But yeah, I just wanted to say it's a dumb space opera. Stop taking it seriously. I mean, all the movies have had their problems. This one's just mostly comes from pacing and a subpar previous movie. So now full on spoiler warning.
Yeah, let's throw up a spoiler warning.
Spoiler warning. You've been warned. I'm giving you this time to click away from this video, mute the pause it, to mute the tab, whatever you need to do. And there was your chance. So you want to just go like down the list of characters or something? I mean,
yeah, all right.
So Kylo Ren does some really neat shit.
Yeah, I like what Kylo Ren. And this movie has a redemption arc. Kylo Ren turns out good at the end of the movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's not. I saw some people saying it was out of nowhere, and I'm just like, did you?
I don't think it was.
Like, did you not watch the previous two movies? He was clearly conflicted all the time.
Yeah.
The whole time he was conflicted.
And especially, if nothing else, they put a lot in. They did a lot in The Last Jedi to show that confliction.
Yep. But yeah, in this, he sacrifices his life for Rey. Finally gets to first base with Rey and then dies.
Yeah.
But he does some cool stuff. I actually like there's that lightsaber scene on the Death Star wreckage. I actually really liked. It's not like as fast or fluid or like crazy flips and shit as the prequel lightsaber fights, but it looks like two people who are not like super well trained in lightsaber usage because they didn't grow up. They weren't reared in the Jedi Temple or whatever.
Yeah.
Who are basically just relying on the Force to help them.
I want to point out that I had this thought earlier today. People complain about Rey beating Kylo Ren in a lightsaber fight, which I agree she shouldn't have been able to do in The Force Awakens. But have you watched the way Kylo Ren fights? He's not very good.
No.
He's just brute forces it all, right? He just swings like he's swinging a mace or something. So, I mean, maybe it's understandable when you look at the way he fights, how actually bad he is at lightsaber fighting.
Yeah.
But there's a part he fights the Knights of Ren, and he's pretty cool, like in that fight, taking him out, and
yeah,
and there's like 5 of them or something, right?
Yeah, but again, none of 6 of them, I think. Again, it's not nearly as like crazy acrobatic stuff as you saw in the prequels.
No. But I mean, it looks just like Kylo Ren because he's a big dude, broad chested and all that. I mean, you saw Ben Swallow. It looks like he's just kind of brute forces everything most of the time. But he showed a little bit of finesse against the Knights of Ren. Held his own against. He
did some cool lightsaber flourishes in there too, which I really liked. Which I get why he never did before because you can't really do it with that crossguard lightsaber.
Yeah,
but he does some cool like behind the back flourishes and stuff that show that he probably does have some skill with the lightsaber.
Well, he did get trained by Luke for a while.
Yeah, not that Luke ever shows any real expert level skill with the lightsaber.
That's true.
I mean, his big defeat of Darth Vader is him just wailing on him until he cuts through that railing in Darth Vader's hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to point out that Luke almost killed his father in Return of the Jedi, and then when he comes closer to killing his own father in Return of the Jedi than he ever did come to killing Kylo Ren, and people want to bitch about Luke. Oh, Luke would never do that. Like, Luke almost killed his father when he was trying to save him.
When he went there specifically with the intent to save him.
He went there specifically with the intent to save him, and he almost kills him, and he comes closer to killing Vader than he ever did Kylo Ren.
Yep. But yeah, so
or Ben. He was still just Ben at the time.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a redemption arc for Kylo Ren. He does some cool stuff. I actually like his voice better in the helmet, so I'm glad they brought it back. I just think he sounds cool and sinister in the helmet.
Yeah.
So anything else to point out on that? I mean,
I don't think so.
The only problem I have with Kylo Ren in this movie is the way he delivers the news to Rey that she's Palpatine's granddaughter. Because it's like, I mean, I was expecting a full-on like Empire Strikes Back moment. It's like, Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. And he's like, told me enough. You told me you killed him. And, like,
no, I'm your father.
Yeah.
So you were like, you are Palpatine's granddaughter.
Yeah, he's just like, you're Palpatine's granddaughter. Like, just.
Oh, I want to point something out. It's not like a big deal. It's not a problem, but we both had this same thought, and we like turned to each other. There's this part where they're going after this like map thing, the Sith map thing that'll lead them to this Sith planet. Because it's not on any star charts, and you have to fly through this like rift in space or something. It's and there's only a certain path you can chart through it. So there's one on the Death Star wreckage. That's why they're there. Rey gets it and she drops it, and it tumbles across the ground, and then it gets stopped by Kylo Ren, and it looks like he reached. It looks like as it's tumbling on the ground that he stops it with his foot. And picks it up with his foot, and then what it was, no, he stops it with his hand, but the angle it was at,
his black gloved
hand in the darkness, and it just sort of looks like he sticks his foot out
until it's like halfway up to his face, and you're like, "What the hell is going on?" And then the hand rotates, and you realize it's his hand,
not his foot.
Not his foot. I leaned over, I was like, "Did you think he was picking that up with his foot?"
I was like, "Yeah, I did."
I just bumped the mic there. Yeah, yeah. And then when we saw it the second time, I was like, dude, that really just looks like he stopped it with his foot.
It still looks like a foot.
Like, I know it's a hand, it still looks like a foot. I don't know how that got past the dailies.
It was so weird.
But anyway. So Rey has a cool arc, too. A lot of, like, like, she saw that vision of her sitting on the throne, which is probably, now that we know, is probably sent to her by Palpatine.
So yeah, Rey is Palpatine's granddaughter. They never say which of her parents is Palpatine's offspring, but
they didn't. I thought they said it was her father.
I don't think they ever said which of her parents was Palpatine.
See, I had it in my mind it was her father, and that had to come from somewhere, I would think, right? Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I don't think they ever said it. But anyway, yeah, so the reason Kylo Ren said that her parents were nobodies is because he wasn't able to make the connection to Palpatine from his vision. So, as far as he knew, they were nobodies.
Yeah. So, so Rey has this whole, like, internal conflict thing going on. She even has a Dagobah cave moment when she finally gets to that Sith holocron thing.
Yeah, which fortunately is the extent of that, like, Sith version of her with the double-bladed flip-out lightsaber thing. And
it's so much faster. Like, that shot of her flipping that lightsaber open, is so much faster in the movie than it was in the trailer. Like, it literally is a blink and you miss it moment.
Yeah, it almost looks like she has 2 lightsabers. Like, it just cuts and suddenly she has 2 lightsabers or something. It's weird. But yeah, that's a Dagobah cave moment. So everyone out there's like, oh no, does she turn to the dark side? Nope.
No. And so, yeah, and she does some cool, like, you find they also explain why she's as powerful as she is despite her lack of training. And it's basically like what has been sort of hinted at. And I got this idea from, like, I didn't come up with this idea, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't like a fan theory, so it had to come from somewhere. I don't know if it was like mentioned in the books or in the comics or something, but the idea being that the Force will always balance itself out. So you have really powerful Sith, since the Emperor's still alive, they're still very powerful Sith. And if there's only one Jedi, then the Force will be incredibly powerful in that one Jedi to sort of balance it out. And yeah, that is the case. Like, all of the Jedi of the past, their abilities and knowledge and power are being channeled through her.
There's even a moment in the movie where basically, like, every Jedi that's had a speaking role in all the previous Star Wars movies and TV shows,
and even one who didn't, because I didn't. Because one of the credits was for the Twi'lek chick.
Aayla Secura?
Yeah, one of them was for Aayla Secura. I don't think she ever had a speaking line, did she?
In the Clone Wars.
Oh, did she?
Did one of them sound French?
Dude, there was just we were looking through the credits on IMDb, and it's like Sam Jackson has a credit, Ewan McGregor and Ian McKellen. Why did I say Ian McKellen? Obi-Wan.
Oh shit!
Another old white
Alec Guinness.
Another old white British actor. Alec Guinness. Both of them were credited in there. Frank Oz was credited in there.
Ahsoka, right? Wasn't Ahsoka?
Yeah.
Ashley Eckstein.
So was
the wife of that baseball player.
Kanan.
Freddie Prinze Jr.
Freddie Prinze Jr. Oh, I didn't see anything in there about the kid. God,
we don't know what.
No, not the son. The kid from the show.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm saying they can't do anything with them because Dave Filoni has, like, he's the only one allowed to do anything with them right now, and since they haven't established what happens to him after the end of the show, they can't use him for anything.
Yeah. Dude, like, man, we were talking about what big Star Wars fans are, and we're just drawing blanks on names right now. But anyway, and like Hayden Christensen is in there. Like Hayden Christensen's like the most recognizable voice, I think,
other than Yoda.
Well, okay. Yeah, of all the people who speak like normal people, Hayden Christensen, I think, is the most, like, the easiest to pick out of this, like, because it's just all these Jedi voices, like, I
picked out Sam Jackson pretty easily.
Yeah, Sam Jackson as well. But it's just, so it's all these Jedi, like, talking to her, and it explains, yeah, okay, so all these Jedi are channeling their powers and their abilities through her, and that's why she was able to do these things, and she, like, surprises herself with her Force abilities at times, so it kind of makes sense.
What I think was funny, like, you made the comment of once again prove that Palpatine's greatest weakness is his own Force lightning.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's killed Rey deflects the lightning, his Force lightning, back at him, and it melts his face in the best, like, face melting scene since Raiders of the Lost Ark.
It's really incredible. It looks really good.
It's like all his, like, flesh, like, flakes away, and then it's like all skeletal. It's really cool.
It's really pretty creepy if you have, like, small children who, I mean, I think that's probably the one thing that I wouldn't want, like, a small child seeing in this movie.
Yeah. But before that, like, Palpatine's all, like, withered and, like, zombie-like. He's got these cataracts and, like...
And he's hooked up to a machine like he's Adeptus Mechanicus from Warhammer.
like his hands are all like withered. They're like he's missing fingers or chunks of fingers, and like there's like bones sticking out the end of his fingers.
It's really gross looking.
Yeah, he's all like decaying and nasty.
Also, I want to point out there was a tank full of Snokes.
Yeah, so the answer to Snoke is that he's apparently like a clone, possibly of Palpatine himself. We don't know exactly, but Palpatine makes the statement, "I made Snoke," and there's these like tanks of Snokes, like that scene from Alien 4, whichever the subtitle of it was, because it's such a horrible movie, where they go in and there's all the like the Ripley clones that are all like malformed and stuff. It's kind of like that. But one thing I really did like about this movie is delving into the ancient Sith stuff.
Oh man, ancient Sith and ancient Jedi stuff. I eat that shit up in the
in like the old EU and the comic books and the Western games stuff especially. They always talked about the Sith were masters of like using the Force to like genetically manipulate things and engineer things and like these stuff, and it kind of shows that there's all these Sith acolytes like working on whatever, keeping Palpatine alive through Sith.
Whether or not
magic.
J.J. Abrams like did that on purpose as like a with that in mind, it happened, and I'm cool.
Yeah, and then they're working on these like Snoke clones and stuff. So yeah, it's very cool.
Someone in a review I saw. Someone kind of like equates that whole like planet setting, says it's kind of Warhammer-esque, and I can kind of see it.
Well, you have to fly through like a warp storm to get there, and there's this massive temple, and then like you go in and you go down, and there's these 100-foot tall statues in this huge like hall, and
yeah,
it's pretty crazy.
I mean, it feels like something straight out of the. What are those old Dark Horse comics? The Tales of the Jedi?
Tales of the Jedi.
Yeah, it feels like something straight out of the Tales of the Jedi, frankly.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And recently, if you're big Star Wars fans like us, recently the existence of Korriban was made canon because it appeared in
Dr. Aphra Annual.
And there was another place it was mentioned, I think, too, right?
Possibly.
But yeah, it was in the Dr. Aphra Annual. She goes to Korriban. So that was really cool. And so, like, and that's the thing, man. Like, I really want them to make a movie series that delves into all that ancient stuff.
It wasn't the Dr. Aphra Annual. It was the
or it was the Dr. Aphra issue of the Black Spire.
Yeah, it was the Dr. Aphra issue of the Black Spire tie-in comic
for Galaxy's Edge.
For Galaxy's Edge, yeah,
that's right. Anyway, I really want them to delve into all that ancient Jedi, and I mean, they sort of, you know, like you get the idea that there were ancient Jedi like on Jeddah, and that's probably where they got their name. But that's as far as it went. There's these massive 100-foot tall Jedi statues out in the desert, and that's really cool. I saw that. I was like, I want to know more about that. I don't give a shit about the rest of this. I want to know more about that. But anyway, and so yeah, it's just a really creepy like setting. It's really, really neat, really well done as far as like giving you that sort of like dark, evil, creepy vibe.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that, you're like, I can't understand how anyone could live on this planet and not be evil.
Yeah,
you're just gonna turn dark.
Yeah, and that's where the Sith fleet comes from. That's those Star Destroyers with the underslung planet-killing lasers. And by the way, one of those things blowing up a planet was that really cool explosion we were talking about.
Yeah. It's kind of cool because it's like, all right, it's not quite as powerful as the Death Star because it has to like blast several times.
Like it's this
planet.
Constant beam that you see like pulses of like more powerful beam traveling down the beam.
Yeah, it takes a while, but it does eventually blow up a planet.
I said beam a lot.
Yep.
And it's you know, it's kind of like eye rolling a bit because it's like, oh, another planet destroyer, but they got 1,000 of them this time.
Yeah,
you know, and so you're just kind of like, oh, come on. Like, they made such a big deal out of the massive kyber crystals that were necessary to make the Death Star work, and like in the novels they talk about like the feat of engineering and how long it took them to make that thing, and how like all the internal workings of the super laser, how crazy it all is.
Here's the thing: they did not need those underslung planet destroying cannons because there are so many Star Destroyers. That number of Star Destroyers alone would have been a threat to the entire galaxy.
See, the way I would have done that is I would have just made it like, oh, they're just Imperial 2 class Star Destroyers, like from the old movies, and it's just
that's what they look like initially,
right? It just there's not, there's no New Republic fleet to stop them. It only takes one to just blast a planet's surface with its turbo lasers into oblivion, and I would have just had that happen. You don't need it to be planet destroying. You could have just said, "Look, there's 1,000, literally like 1,000 Star Destroyers." Probably not that many, but it's a ridiculous number of Star Destroyers, and they could have just been like, "Look, they have this massive fleet." Because they have this show of force, like send one to a planet they know and blow it the hell up so the galaxy knows we mean business.
They could have just gone there and did an orbital bombardment on that planet. They couldn't have stopped them.
I'm paraphrasing, by the way.
No, those are word for word what Palpatine said.
I think I have a decent enough Palpatine impression. And anyway, yeah, it could have just been like I would have just been like, send a couple out to, blast the surface of this planet into oblivion with its turbo lasers. It didn't need to be another planet killer, because it's a trope that's just like everyone rolled their eyes at Star Killer Base. We don't need to do this again, right?
Right.
But other than that, I mean, it's the threat. I think it's a solid threat. Real quick before I forget to do it, I do want to touch on the things that they were like. The fans had a problem with this. Here's a throwaway line for why we're not doing this thing. So, the first one being, "Hey, Rose, you want to be in this movie?" So they had we were talking about this earlier. So basically, what happens with Rose is like she's more or less a background character throughout the movie. And when the main crew, so Rey, Finn, Poe, C-3PO, and Chewbacca are all getting the Falcon ready to go off on their adventure, they're like, "Hey, Rose, you want to come with us?" And she's like, "Oh no, the general wants me studying schematics of old destroyers so we know how to defeat them." I'm like, I refuse to believe that they don't know how to take down a Star Destroyer at this point.
Right.
But whatever.
Also, how did they know that this fleet is all made up of basically modified old Imperial Star Destroyer?
Yeah, so it's just this throwaway line that's basically like, "Look, the fans had a problem with the character, so we're just not even gonna."
The other thing is,
I don't have a problem with Rose, but
yeah,
I understand.
I don't either.
I get when they're just sitting there like, "Oh man, we can't have this backlash again."
I think the other thing is, though, there's just too many characters.
Yeah, it would have been too many otherwise.
Although I think what they should have done is in the movie kind of opens up with the Falcon on a mission.
Yeah, we were talking about a way they could have helped redeem Rose.
And they could have put her in a little bit more and a bigger role. And so the Falcons, they're on this mission where they're going to this I don't know, it's like this big chunk of ice in space. You see it in the trailer with they're mining there or something, but they show up there because someone has some information.
Missed a perfect opportunity to bring the Starforge into this.
Yeah. Anyway, some contact they have there has some information about the First Order. And so they're flying in and Finn passes by, or not Finn. Is it Finn or is it?
Yeah, it's
Finn or Poe?
Poe. Yeah, it's Poe.
Anyway, they pass by this character who's this big slug guy. And he's working on fixing something in the Falcon. I'm like, well, that could have been Rose.
Yeah, so that could have been Rose. And then they have a chase scene. Just TIE fighters are chasing him. And by the way, I want to point out the Starforge as imagined by the old West End games, where it was a pirate base, not the Starforge from KOTOR.
Well, they retconned that so that the wreckage of the Starforge from KOTOR became a black.
A black site or a black port.
Black port, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
it's not a black site. The Empire has those.
Yeah.
But I just want to point out that's what I meant. So don't get confused about that. But anyway, so yeah, they have a chase scene, and then Poe does some hyperspace skipping, right? And it's this dangerous thing where you just do a bunch of random jumps one after another. And it's hard on the hyperdrive and damages thing. The Falcon comes in on fire after all of it. Could have gotten on the radio and been like, "Rose, I need more power in coil whatever for what I'm about to do." And she could have been like, "Oh, okay." And then show her oh, if I route power from here to here and do this, whatever buzzwords, engineering words you need her to say, and could have been like, oh look, it's a good thing we had Rose here to do crazy engineering shit, so Poe could do his crazy flying shit.
Yeah, and that could have got her a larger role, and then you do the same thing where she's sort of off to the side for the rest of the movie.
It would have been it was an opportunity to have something of a redemption for her, or not a redemption, but like make her more liked by the fan base.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of missed opportunities in this movie for things. So let's see. Everyone's new favorite character is Babu Frick.
Babu Frick.
Hello, I am Babu Frick.
He's this like 8-inch tall puppet alien,
and he's a droid.
And he's kind of insane
engineer. Well, so So earlier in the movie, they find this knife that has coordinates to something, but
they find a MacGuffin.
Yes, but it's written in Sith, and I guess like 3PO starts to say like back in the Old Republic there was.
He says, "I believe it was passed by the Senate."
So, which means the Old Republic.
Yeah.
That Sith language there that as a protocol droid he's not allowed to speak the Sith language.
He's not allowed to translate
or anything. And so they're like, well, we can still get it out of him. They lose the knife, and then like we can still get the information out of him, but we have to do this thing to access his memory, and it could possibly wipe his memory. And that's where you get that scene from the trailer where C-3PO's "I'm saying goodbye to my friends." And so Babu Frick, this little 8-inch tall droid engineer, does it. And afterwards, like, ta-da! And, like, 3PO recites it, but it reboots his memory, so he doesn't remember any of them. And 3PO introduces himself. He's like, "Hello, I'm Babu Frick."
Yeah, he's like, at the end, like when all the friends of everyone in the galaxy shows up, and Poe Dameron's ex-girlfriend shows up, and he like looks over and he's like, "Who's that flyer?" And he looks over and it's the bounty hunter chick or what, or like the, his old fling, and Babu Frick pops up and he's like, "Hey!"
But so that's supposed to be emotional that C-3PO lost his memory, but then like 2 scenes later, R2-D2, because he's got a backup in R2-D2 restores his memory.
I counted it and it was like 5 scenes later, I think.
Yeah, but he just restores his memory, and it's just basically was restored to like just before they left on that mission. Because first thing he says is like, "Oh, I get to go on a mission with Mistress Rey." R2 beeps at him. He's like, "What? I already did."
Yeah,
I'm like, oh well, there went that emotional hook there.
Yeah, and that was gonna be the next thing I brought up. Actually, that happens twice. So Rey, so they go to that desert planet. You've seen in the trailers. They have a chase scene on some speeders being chased by some First Order stormtroopers on these like half-track motorcycle things or whatever. It's cool chase scene, cool action scene. There's a triple thud grenade launcher straight out of Starship Troopers.
The animated
series, the Roughneck Chronicles. I'm not even joking. And it's a cool scene, and so at the end of all that, Knights of Ren show up and they capture Chewbacca, and Rey does the flippy thing over Kylo Ren's TIE fighter.
Yeah, from the trailer.
And
cuts the wing off it.
Cuts the wing. She
cuts through the wing, and it breaks the way.
Yeah, she cuts through a chunk of the wing. I was happy she didn't sever the wing.
Yeah.
I was happy. It's like, oh, okay, so she cut through part of it, and
it just ripped the wing.
You have these giant air sails, like, catching all that air out, what? Okay, so it just, rips the rest of the wing off. And there's a really, like, I don't know how Kylo Ren like came walking out of that wreckage.
Well, you notice he comes out of the wreckage he comes out of the wreckage without his helmet on, and I commented like I had to take my helmet off because I puked in it.
But so anyway, and Finn's like, "Oh, Rey, we gotta go. They got Chewbacca," and he points at the First Order ship taking off, and she reaches out with the Force and she's pulling it down, and Kylo Ren's like, "Well, no, I'm gonna pull it down too, but over here instead." And
instead of just like using the Force to push her away or distract her or something.
Yeah,
so let's go.
And the ship's like trying to fly away, and so the two of them are pulling it, and it's going back and forth. And she's like gets all emotional, and Force lightning shoots out of her hand again, surprising herself with her Force powers. blows the ship up, and you're sitting there going, holy shit, they killed Chewbacca. Right? And you're thinking like, oh man, JJ's got some balls on him, right?
Mm-hmm. Didn't even have to drop a planet on him.
No.
Or a moon.
God, I feel so bad for Timothy Zahn.
That wasn't Timothy Zahn.
Or,
that was that guy that wrote all those D&D books.
Oh,
R.A.
right.
Salvatore.
Salvatore, yeah, because it was Vector Prime.
Yeah.
It was the first book. I had in my mind it was the second.
Did Timothy Zahn write any of those books?
Didn't he? I thought he did.
I don't remember.
Anyway, so anyway, yeah, and that's a reference to how Chewbacca died in the old expanded universe, by the way. Anyway, so
they're like, oh no, Chewie's dead. And then like next scene, Chewie's alive.
I counted it, 2 scenes later. Literally 2 scenes later. Now the main characters don't find out for a little bit, but the audience is suddenly like, oh, okay, he's just prisoner, whatever.
He was on a different ship.
Yeah. Well, okay, so
because they showed 2 lander craft.
Yeah, and the thing is, the first time you watch it, you're not really paying attention to that because they're like off in the he's over there. There's one wide shot, very brief wide shot that shows both ships, and then a tighter shot that shows them pushing him onto one of them, and that one is only framed on one ship. So, watching it the second time, I was on the lookout if there was a second ship, and there was. But the first time through, I didn't notice 2 ships. Like I mean, I probably saw it registered as there's first order ships. Didn't even think about how many there were because I wasn't expecting Rey to blow one of them up with Force lightning. Neither was Rey, to be fair.
Right.
And so yeah, the 2 like big emotional things that are just never mind.
Yeah, like right.
Doesn't matter. Just completely doesn't matter.
Yep. So that was kind of well. All right. I guess they just didn't have the balls to do that. But it allows Chewie to live to the end where he gets a medal.
Finally gets the medal from A New Hope. So something else I want to point out too that I had a slight issue with, and this is.
But he got the medal. There was a comic book where he got the medal.
The canon one of the new ones.
Yes.
Well, okay, well,
but like way back from when they like right after.
Well, here, okay, so
the Force Awakens.
Here's the thing
released.
that sort of plays into what I'm about to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Of Disney needed to do a better, and this goes also back to they needed to have all of this planned out ahead of time, but they needed to make sure that the writers were more versed in the expanded. I mean the thing it's expanded universe for lack of knowing what else to call it. Typically, when
we'll call it Legends. The old expanded universe we'll call it Legends, which is what Disney's doing.
Right. So the expanded universe. So the comics, the books, the video games, the additional even the Galaxy's Edge is canon. So the expanded universe, all this additional media that ties into the main story, they needed to make sure that the writers were more well versed in that. So there was a novel that bridges The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, where basically they go, oh, why didn't any of our friends show up? We have friends, right? People like us, right? Why didn't anyone show up? And then so they send some people out. They send Black Squadron out to like go recruit some people. Snap Wexley, who has a bullshit death in this movie, is sent to with his wife Kare.
Yeah, they should have killed off Elo Asti.
Yeah, but no, they wouldn't kill off Elo Asti. Also, Elo Asti's not in that novel, I don't think.
Or was that Elo Asti, or was that just another alien of his species?
Might have just been another. I can't remember if Elo Asti died in Force Awakens or not. Anyway, so they're sent off to go get Wedge and Snap's mom, who was Nora, who is the Y-wing pilot that breaks off. So, they retcon this so that the Y-wing in Return of the Jedi. Remember that when they're flying in with the Falcon, Wedge, a Y-wing, and an A-wing.
Yeah.
And the A-wing and the Y-wing break off to pull some of the fighters.
A-wing pilot's like, copy, Gold Leader.
This is weird. Like he forgets
radio.
Cadence. Like he forgets radio protocol for a second. Anyway, and so they retcon it so she's that Y-wing pilot. Well, she and Wedge are banging now.
Well, Wedge is Snap's like stepdad now, right?
Yes. And he actually does call him dad by the end of that novel. But anyway, so basically they find out though that the reason none of their friends showed up is the First Order has been going around and arresting all the people who sympathize with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, they go and release a bunch of high-value prisoners from this prison work detail on Corellia, where they're building a bunch of First Order ships now. And, like, most of the book takes place on Corellia. Some of it's on Ryloth as well. And in this movie, though, they're like, oh, the reason no one showed up is everyone's too scared to fight the First Order. And I'm just like, well, I mean, fuck that novel that they wrote specifically to bridge these two movies, right?
Well, here's something else that I have a problem with, is we suddenly learn that Poe Dameron, prior to joining the Resistance, was a spy smuggler, right? Except in the third Aftermath novel, Poe Dameron was a Republic pilot, and that Leia recruited to being a pilot in the Resistance.
Yep.
In the comic books, of the Poe Dameron comic books, it talks about him being a Republic pilot. It never mentions him ever being a smuggler. In this movie, this person from his old spy smuggling days was like, well, he left our gang to go join the Resistance. Like, what happened to him being a Republic pilot?
Yeah. And in this novel, Wedge is like, oh, Poe Dameron's still alive? He was my best student.
When he was a Republic pilot.
Yeah, because Wedge, in the Aftermath books, Wedge, which is where Wedge and Nora Wexley are introduced. Or not, Wedge isn't introduced, but Nora Wexley is introduced in the Aftermath books, and Wedge is a fairly big part of at least the first one. And he's training Republic pilots at that time. But in this most recent book, he's like, oh, Poe's still alive? He was he was my best student. After you, Snap, and Snap's like, I was a terrible student. He's like, you were a terrible student. And it's like, okay, that was a cute little interaction, but yeah, no, it implies that Wedge trained Poe to fly, which I thought was a cool connection, because Wedge is supposed to be this crack shot pilot for the rebellion. Mm-hmm. And then presumably, he stays on in the New Republic and is still a crack shot pilot. And then when he gets to the point where he can't fly anymore, I think he hurt his leg or something. He
hurt his leg in the first chapter of the first Aftermath book. It was bullshit.
Oh yeah, that's right. And so they, he's now a trainer, an instructor for the New Republic Navy, and it's just, and it's not like that big a thing. You can sort of be retconned to like, oh well, he joined the New Republic with the intent of fighting back against the First Order, and then the Resistance formed to fight. And it's like you could sort of shoehorn something in to make it happen, but it's like if they would have just changed it from join the Resistance to join the New Republic, it would have. I
would have been fine with them. Like, okay, so before yeah. But what happened to this Republic pilot? Because the timeline has always been like he was a Republic pilot. Then Leia's like, hey, I'm forming this Resistance thing, which the Republic is not going to support. But we got to do this to stop the First Order. And he's like, okay, I'll come with you. That's how it had always been established in all prior media.
Yeah. Which makes me wonder where, what's his name was when all this was being written then? The Lore Master.
Pablo
Hidalgo, yeah. Where was he when all this was going out?
I don't know. He let them change the rules to Sabacc all of a sudden.
Yeah, well. But, yeah, so, and again, it's like, it's not a problem with the movie. It's a problem when you're like me and have consumed all this other Star Wars media.
Right. Anyone who hasn't read these other books or the comic books isn't going to pick up on that. They're like, oh, okay, that's what he did.
Yeah. Not that big a deal, whatever.
I
mean, Han was a smuggler before he
became
a rebellion.
That's the thing, is people, they're giving him, like, Finn in particular is giving him a hard time for being a smuggler, and it's like, Han Solo was a smuggler. Weren't you cool with him?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a kind of funny line. It's like, you were a smuggler? You were a stormtrooper? I'm like, he's got you there, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, at least being a spy smuggler isn't necessarily evil.
Yeah.
Oh man. Also, General Hux being like, "I'm the spy," it was a little.
Well,
they could have. I mean, and he explains himself, and I'm fine with his explanation. It just felt like they could have built that up a little more, shown, sort of like sprinkled in a hint of like, maybe this guy's the spy, or maybe that guy's the spy.
Well, I heard the second time we saw it, I heard the people next to me, because there's a part when they mentioned the spy, and then the other General Pride, it sort of like zooms in on him, and it's got that like weird lighting where it's like all his eyes are lit up, everything's in shadow, and they're like, oh, he's the spy. And I think that was supposed to be a little bit of subterfuge there until Hux. But the moment that the stormtroopers line them up to execute them and Hux comes in, I'm like, well, Hux is the spy.
Yep, I thought the exact same thing.
But I was like, but Hux is so he's so like he would never be the spy, right? And I was like, that's weird. Like the way he'd always been established again in the media beyond the movies.
Yeah.
But then his excuse was he wasn't the spy because he wanted the Resistance to win. He was the spy because he wanted Kylo Ren to lose.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
From the way he had always been established. Where I'm like, okay, this hasn't detracted from anything.
I'm fine with the explanation for why he's the spy. I just think they missed an opportunity to sort of build up to it a little better.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think it's a situation of like, JJ came and was like, oh god, alright. So where are we sitting at? Like, oh man, how can the Resistance possibly find out about this giant Sith fleet? It's got to be a spy. Well, it only makes sense if it's a high-ranking spy, the spy is a high-ranking individual, and we can't. It would have felt weird to introduce a new character just to be the spy. You know what I mean? And so I get why, and I don't have a problem with him being the spy for that reason. It's just the build-up and reveal just felt like, ah. Again, a lot of the stuff in the movie was just like, whoa, that was fast. That was sudden.
Yeah, I mean, they got to squeeze a lot into this movie to make it work. Make it work as well as it did, anyway.
Yep.
I don't know. What else are we going to talk about?
Ian McDiarmid was freaking amazing.
Oh, yeah, dude. He was pretty awesome as just...
He's just such a sinister, gross guy. Like, you know what I mean? Just like you look at
portrayal of Palpatine.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying Ian McDiarmid is gross. It's probably
Ian McDiarmid's pretty funny. I think I saw on the premiere night he showed up. He's like, "Yeah, I just showed up to see if I'm in this movie or not."
Which they tell you so early in the movie that he's in the movie that it's in the opening crawl.
The opening crawl it starts off with the words, "The dead speak. Emperor Palpatine is alive."
Yeah, it's just like, oh, all right. Answers that. It's like there's just like a checklist of like things they need to answer as they're going down. Like, all right, Palpatine is alive. Like, who raised parentage? Check. It's like check.
Oh, so something else that was kind of cool that they set up in The Last Jedi that pays off in this movie is the connection between Rey and Kylo Ren, where they can see each other from different locations. Yeah, they can't really see. They can't see the other location. They just see the other person.
There's like some connection between them in the Force, and it's probably why
they had a word for it. I don't remember what it was.
Dual was like
dual was the root word.
Root word. It was a duality, or I don't remember, but
it's something that occasionally happens or something like that. They said so. Maybe they'll write that into something else later.
Oh my god, how cool would it be if they do a comic series about a Jedi and a Sith that are ancient Jedi and ancient Sith, thousands of years before the events of the movies, and they're whatever that word was. That'd be so cool.
So anyway, they do a really cool scene where because they've snuck aboard a Star Destroyer and Rey's in Kylo Ren's quarters
trying to find the dagger, and then Kylo Ren is on the planet below searching for
her, and so he's in this like market square, and it's like the way they like cut it together and then have like both scenes like at the same time in there. It was really neat, and then
it was really well done.
And then they get into a lightsaber fight, and she cuts open like a basket of berries, so like the berries spill all over the floor of Kylo Ren's quarters, and then they knock over the plinth with Darth Vader's helmet on it, and then he sees it on the ground and he realizes where she's at. But
they started this. They put in the little nugget in Last Jedi for this.
Yeah, so it's something else that they do, which it sets up for something that can happen later, is when they're on this desert planet at this festival, and they do the same thing, and someone had given her a bead necklace.
It's part of like some religious
right, and he
thing.
reaches out and grabs the necklace from her, and so it pulls it into where he's at. So they use that to find where she's at. So that sets up for later in the movie after Kylo Ren has had his redemption, and she's facing off against Palpatine, and she has both Luke's lightsaber, or Anakin's lightsaber, really.
It's Anakin's lightsaber.
And Leia's lightsaber. Because it established that Leia actually went through Force training, which all the people out there are like, how did Leia do this stuff with the Force? You never had training. Like, well, no, you never saw her have training, but Luke trained her. She gave up the Jedi path because she had a vision saying if she continued down this path, it would lead to her son's death. Or something like that. Right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so she gave it up. And so Luke had her lightsaber. So now Rey has both lightsabers. And so Kylo Ren's facing off unarmed against the Knights of Ren.
Like just outside of Palpatine's room.
Right, and so she reaches with one lightsaber behind her back and lets go, and suddenly it's in Kylo Ren's hand. And so now he's got a lightsaber, and so she pulls out Leia's lightsaber to fight Palpatine. And I'm like, that was kind of cool. Like they set that up, and that really paid off.
Yeah, well, they
for that.
And I mean, they set it up in the Last Jedi where when he's talking, I think it's the scene where he's Ben Swallow, right?
Yeah.
And she's on the island with Luke, and it's raining there or something, and they're talking, and when the vision is done, his face is wet, and he like reaches up and like wipes the water away, and you sort of get like that was weird, like I've never seen that before, but that was neat, and it kind of feels like, well, maybe it's just to sort of signify that there is some kind of a connection between these two, but it does ultimately like result in something that pays off in this movie, which I really liked.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of cool, like, so they brought back Lando. I don't think he did enough, but he was cool. And then they brought back Wedge for one shot.
Literally one. They made such a big deal out of getting him into this movie.
It's like basically like Lando,
man.
and then like 1,000 other ships show up to fight the Sith Empire, and you show up and Wedge is the gunner in the Millennium Falcon, and he's like, "Nice flying, Lando," and it just cuts him going, "Nice flying, Lando," and then it cuts away like it's all you ever see of him.
You're like, oh well, he's clearly in the gunner turret, and that's cool. I don't think I even saw him in the celebration party at the end.
He might have been there, but I didn't see him.
Yeah. So I can't wait for this to come out on Blu-ray so I can pause it and try to figure out what like all those different like if there's anything in there that's like a nod to old EU stuff. Like I was telling you, I would have taken the opportunity if I were like one of the 3D artists working on that scene. I would have thrown in the wild card. For sure.
Yeah.
And I would have thrown in like the Houndstooth and
we got the Ghost. We're pretty sure it's the Ghost. It's the same class of ship anyway. There's actually some significant firepower in that motley bunch of ships.
Yeah,
there's some Nebulon B frigates.
Nebulon B's. There's what's that thing? It's in the Armada game. That's the rebel ship's like show it to you. It's the model's this big. It's about 4 inches long.
Uh-huh.
And it's got like the wings on the very back of it.
I don't remember what it's called.
There's one of those in there. There's something that looks suspiciously like the battle cruiser from StarCraft in there.
Yeah. One little thing I caught the second time we were watching it. So one of the characters, you never hear his name, but he's a Mon Cal, and he's called Colonel Akbar. Right?
Yeah.
He's listed he's credited as Colonel Akbar, but they never say his name. But Poe calls him Junior at one point.
Yeah, I didn't catch that, but I'll believe
it. Yeah, it was in the second time we saw it. I noticed it, like when they first like land after the beginning, and the Falcon's all screwed up, and he stalks off into the base like all yelling because he goes up to Akbar. He's like, "Hey, Junior," or whatever, and he calls him that, and he's like, "Oh yeah," talking to him.
Yeah, so that was, but yeah, I would have taken the opportunity, just like little like I'm like people have been complaining that this movie's like a lot of fan service, and I'm like, well,
should it be all fan service?
It's the final saga movie. It should be fan service, frankly. But I would have taken the opportunity to have like some very subtle fan service for like real, like deep real deep cut fan service moments in there by throwing in like I said, Wildcar, the Houndstooth, like some of these more well known ships from the old EU. And like, here's these cool things like those Hut cruisers.
Oh yeah,
stuff like that. I would have thrown that in. Thrown the Slave One in there somewhere. Hell, the Slave One might be in there. There's so many ships.
Yeah, it's like 1,000 ships. You can't even count them all. What else would be cool? Like a YT 2400.
Oh yeah, the Outrider.
Yeah. The
Outrider. Yeah. Dash Rendar ship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, didn't they put one of those in Rebels?
I think they did.
Yeah.
I would have also put in an E-wing.
All right.
That would have been cool, right?
Yeah.
A green X-wing, green 265.
Oh, we get Luke's ship back in there. Luke's X-wing.
Oh yeah,
cool.
yeah, Red 5.
Yeah, Luke. The ghost of Luke raises it out of the ocean.
With the smuggest look on his face.
You thought it was smug?
He looked so dude. He looked so smug when she turns around and he's like lifting that ship up, like, yeah, take that, Yoda. Eat a dick, Yoda.
So, at the end of the movie, she's built her own lightsaber and it's yellow.
I thought that was cool. The color of the Jedi Sentinel. Although that classification is like doesn't mean anything.
So I
anymore.
wonder though, because like they've established now that the color of the lightsaber reflects the nature of the user who built it,
which is why Mace Windu's is purple.
Yeah, so I wonder if like the intent is like because Rey is maybe somewhere not in between the light and the dark. Maybe the yellow is signifying of that.
Could be,
or yeah, maybe Jedi Sentinel. I don't know, but it's yellow, and I'm like, that's cool.
So
you don't see yellow lightsabers often.
It's so weird they established that in the canon, but man, in Jedi Fallen Order, like when you get to the point where you can pick a lightsaber color, it's just like you just switch between them. Like, oh, I feel like making my lightsaber pink, right? I think, or it's like not pink, it's like a fuchsia or something like that. If you want, or it could be red or green or blue or white, or no, it's like a cyan. You're just like, I feel like doing this color. Oh, I feel like doing that color now.
Yeah, well, that's a video game.
Yeah, but it's canon. It's all canon now. Anyway, I think we've pretty much beaten this one down.
Yeah.
We knew this one was going to be a long one going into it.
We've been talking for like over an hour.
Over an hour, yep. So, any last words on that?
Nah. I probably will think of something like, oh, I wanted to talk about this, but now I can't. Yeah. I got my rant in about Poe.
Yeah. Colonel Aftab Akbar, by the way, is that the full name of that guy. Did that CR-90 survive the fight?
I don't think so. It was taking some heavy hits, and it showed the bridge, and they were like,
because they never saw it get completely destroyed. They showed the bridge when Palpatine was shooting that lightning up, and all the ships were like drifting. Yeah. But I don't think they ever showed it actually get destroyed. Really, my question is Nia Nub dead? Because he was on that bridge.
I don't know.
Oh well.
Dennis Lawson, that's Wedge Antilles.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of his name earlier.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so real quick, so yeah, at the end there they have Hayden Christensen for Anakin. Yeah, Luminara Unduli. Did she have any lines in the movies?
I don't think so. I'm curious if that's who voiced her in the Clone Wars, though.
Well, we're on IMDb right here. We can find out easily enough. Known for Conan the Destroyer, Princess Jenna.
Really?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right there.
Luminara Unduli. Yep. So that was cool. Ashley Eckstein for Ahsoka. Yeah. Jennifer Hale for Ayla Sakura.
Yeah, she voiced her in the show.
Sam Jackson for Windu, obviously. Ewan McGregor and Alec Guinness are on there for Obi-Wan Kenobi. Oh, it's archive sound for Alec Guinness?
Yeah, well, what they would do is what they did and what they had to do for Princess Leia for a lot of the dialogue was take things that they've said and cut together like sounds from like voice recordings to make the words that they want them to say.
Yeah. Angelique Perrin for Adi Gallia.
Oh yeah, she's that one with the weird like it's not even hair, it's got like these like fins coming off her head.
Yeah. Frank Oz for Yoda. Freddie Prinze Jr., Kanan Jarrus.
Oh yeah, and I also was able to pick out Qui-Gon in the
Liam Neeson's also a pretty
distinct voice.
So, and that was cool. Yeah. And don't be surprised if the two stormtroopers that get like force mind affected.
Yeah, if that turns out to be like
some cameo of some kind.
I was listening, I was like, could that be key appeal? Maybe.
I mean, it's the kind of like dumb humor that the two of them would have, right?
Yeah. It was familiar. Like their voices were kind of familiar.
It's hard to tell through the mask, like modulated through the speaker.
Though, but yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, that was overall. I was satisfied with it. It answered all the questions I needed answered. So there's one thing that they set up and didn't address is what Finn was going to say to Rey when he thought they were going to die.
Well, I mean, the assumption is he was going to tell her he loves her.
Right, but they have an opportunity later for him to, for at least for the audience's satisfaction to go over it, and they don't.
He never says it. I always got the impression that where Finn is in love with Rey, Rey is not in love with Finn, and not romantically. Like, loves him as a friend. I think he's been friend zoned by Rey, but I think he has romantic interest in her.
Yeah. But anyway, so I think that's pretty much it for our review of The Rise of Skywalker. It's probably going to take a while, let the dust settle before maybe watch it again when it comes out on Blu-ray or in Disney Plus, obviously. It's sort of let it stew a bit and see how we feel later on. Because like it took a while for people to realize Episode 1 wasn't good. And it took a while for people to realize Episode 2 was freaking terrible. Like, I think people walked out of that going, that wasn't good. But I think it took a while for people to realize that, like, people still don't realize it's a worse movie than The Phantom Menace. But anyway, so our upcoming movies, our next movie we're going to see is probably going to be Uncut Gems, starring Adam Sandler. We'll have to figure out our timing on that. Because, it's Christmas week and all that. So the next movie, according to IMDb's release schedule, is 1917. But there's no... It's weird because it doesn't seem like a movie you would expect a limited initial release from.
Especially the way they've been advertising it.
Every movie we've seen for the last month and a half have had a preview for 1917. And for a couple weeks there was even in the pre-roll a whole thing about like the shooting of the movie and all this. Remember that?
Yeah.
It's like been so much promotional stuff for this. It seems weird that they would have... You see these like limited initial releases for smaller movies typically in art house stuff. Like they did. I think they did it for Jojo Rabbit, for instance.
Yeah,
and it just doesn't seem like the kind of movie that would do that. But according to Fandango, there's no showings in our town until the 10th of January. So I don't know, man. Hopefully, it'll come out next week, but it doesn't look good for that. I mean, the movie looks good, but it doesn't. Us seeing it next week doesn't look good right now. And then that's basically it for this year. I don't think we're interested in seeing Underwater. We might see My Spy, but it looks like that's going to be the weekend we see 1917. Might see Bad Boys for Life. Doolittle looks bad.
I don't think it looks bad. I think it looks like it's kind of okay, though.
And I don't think it looks good. I never liked the story. Anyway, since I was a kid, I thought the story was dumb.
I mean, I didn't like the movies with Eddie Murphy, but
yeah,
those were all really bad. But I don't know. I think Doolittle looks okay.
We'll probably see The Last Full Measure.
That's probably gonna be a limited release.
Yeah. So if we can, we'll probably see it. Get Sebastian Stan and more things. But the first thing in January that like we're really excited for is The Gentleman, the new Guy Ritchie movie. So
That looks good.
yeah, it's got a pretty low Metascore on IMDb right now, but I think Guy Ritchie is like an acquired taste. I think people rate it low because like he talks so highly about, and then if you're not into that like sort of like British gangster kind of movie, I could see you just not really caring for his style. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're gonna see Birds of Prey.
That doesn't look
It
great.
looks like trash. We're
Same
gonna
thing with Sonic the
we're gonna see
Hedgehog.
Sonic the Hedgehog. We can't not see Sonic the Hedgehog. Nolan had a Sonic the Hedgehog 2 poster in his room when we were kids.
Yeah, I loved me some Sonic the Hedgehog when I was a kid.
Still do. I mean, those old games. Some of the new ones are trash, but so we have to see that movie. It looks real bad, but we have to see it. Who knows? It might surprise us. I mean, it looks like it's probably a fun movie.
Yeah.
Oh, I Call of the Wild, man. It's got Karen Gillan in it.
And Harrison Ford, but like, oh yeah,
I care less about Harrison Ford than I do about Karen Gillan.
Yeah, well, maybe if he had some better boobs. Yeah, the animals are all like CG though.
Yeah, it really doesn't look great. But anyways, that's what we got coming up through like February. We after the new year, you always have this period of like stuff that's not good enough to compete in the holiday movie season. Because it's like it's stuff that's not gonna be Oscar worthy. Like those are the two things like that. Those things combine into the first quarter movies, and so there's a whole lot of just meh stuff that comes out at the beginning of the year usually. So that's what we got to look forward to. It's going to be a few months before we start getting back into like Hollywood blockbuster time and start seeing a bunch of cool movies.
Yeah.
So anyway, anything to add to all
No,
that? No, man.
that's
We've been recording for almost an hour and a half, so I think we're good to call this one to an end. So, without further ceremony, thanks for listening.
Bye.